Hello dear students, welcome to the lecture 13 of responsive web design with ASP.NET 5 and MVC pattern and Bootstrap 5. Okay, so today we will study the HTTP context. We are continuing our tutorial set. I will start with cloning our repository as usual. All right, so let's clone the last lectures. Okay, meanwhile it is getting opened. Let's read. So HTTP context. Okay.
Back in the old days, where PHP and ASP ruled the world, dealing with stuff like the query string happened all the time. You would constantly take input from the URL, through the query string, and return content based on it. A lot of this work has been abstracted by the ASP.NET MVC framework. For instance, parameters from the query string are automatically turned into type-safe parameters on your controller actions, and information posted back through forms can be automatically turned into model objects.
We are already doing that in our models. We have made various examples.
However, you will likely soon run into situations where you need to go a bit more low-level and be closer to the HTTP pipeline. This is relevant whenever you want to access the query string or form information directly, but also when you need to deal with stuff like cookies/sessions and response headers.
So when do we need to get into deeper? When we want to work with cookies, sessions, or response headers.
ASP.NET MVC makes it easy for you to access all HTTP-related functionality by gathering it all in the HTTP context class.
Actually, we have also worked with that, I believe, in one of our lectures. Let me check it. Okay, so we have worked with that in our global error logging, and yeah, we already have an idea. Let's rename lecture to 13. Okay.
Accessing the HTTP context. The HTTP context class can be accessed from all of your controllers. For convenience, you can access HTTP context from a property found on your controllers called HTTP context. For even greater convenience, some of the properties found on the HTTP context class is also exposed as properties on the controller, e.g. the request property. Accessing the HTTP context from anywhere else than in your controllers is not generally recommended.
So we should access HTTP context from our controllers only. We can also access from other classes, but it is not recommended. And we are already doing that in our global methods class, actually, in our project.
It was easy to accomplish in earlier versions of the ASP.NET MVC framework, using the HTTP context current property, but it was removed in ASP.NET Core because it basically violates some of the core principles of the MVC architecture. However, if you really need to do it, e.g. to support legacy code, there are ways around it. I suggest that you have a look at this Stack Overflow thread for more information.
For example, let's check this thread. Okay, so it is how to get HTTP context current in ASP.NET Core, and it is not that much easy right now, so significant amount of refactoring. Okay, there are a lot of things. If you ever need that, then you need to work for that.
HTTP context structure. There's a lot of properties and methods relating to the HTTP pipeline, so for convenience, the members of the HttpContext class has been split into several objects, which you can access as properties on the class. Here's a list of the ones you'll likely be using the most. HttpContext request all members related to the current request, e.g. the query string, forms and so on. HttpContext response all members related to the response about to be delivered, e.g. cookies and response headers. HttpContext session all members related to dealing with session, generally used to persist data between requests. HttpContext user all members related to dealing with a, potentially, authenticated user. In the upcoming articles, we'll dig deeper into each of these objects and talk about the most important functionality found in them. Summary. The HttpContext class allows you to get a lot closer to the HTTP pipeline and deal with more low-level stuff yourself, e.g. the query string and cookies.
Okay, so let's start taking our notes for lecture 13. Okay, what is HTTP context? Why do we need and how do we use HTTP context class? Okay, and let's move to the next page.
Query string, get data. One of the most common ways of taking input from the user, in a web application, is through the query string. In older technologies, like PHP and ASP Classic, you would deal directly with the query string, but as mentioned previously, ASP.NET MVC has abstracted most query string handling into parameters for your controller actions. However, in some situations, it will still be relevant to read directly from the query string, and fortunately for us, it's still very easy to do an ASP.NET MVC. What is the query string? URLs are made up of several parts, like protocol, hostname, path, and so on. The query string is the part of the URL that comes after a question mark character. So, in a URL like this,
this is the basic URL knowledge. The first one starts with a question mark, and then for other parameters you use AND. And the equal character is a special character which defines the value of the parameter. So the parameter here is OQ and the parameter here is Q. Google still uses that. For example, when we open Google and type MVC, you see it still uses the basic query methodology. You see query parameter source value is HP, parameter EI, which the value is something like this. Parameter is if else, and there is other things and so on.
Everything after the character is considered the query string. In this case, there are two parameters, one called Q and one called OQ. They have the values test and hello. These would be relevant to the page displayed by the URL. For instance, the Q parameter is likely used to tell the server what the user just searched for. The query string is usually appended as the result of the user clicking on a link or submitting a form. This allows the same file on your server to handle multiple situations. It can vary the output returned based on the input through the query string. Accessing the query string. Access to the query string in ASP.NET MVC is very simple. Just use the HttpContext class, which this entire chapter is about. The information about the query string is located using one of the following properties: HttpContext.Request.QueryString and HttpContext.Request.Query. The difference is that the query string is basically the raw text string, while the query property allows you to easily access keys and their values. We'll use the query property in the next examples, where I'll demonstrate just how easy it is to work with.
Okay, so let's add a new page, and also we will refresh our memory. I am adding the controller lecture 13. Okay, lecture 13 controller. Okay, it is added here. And then let's add a view for lecture 13. And I will use the classic approach, this, and let's add a view. So it will be index.cs.html. Okay, and okay, so there is currently no model for this. However, let's also make a model for lecture 13. This will be a regular class. Okay, lecture 13 model. Okay, so in the model, let's define some properties such as integer, okay, car ID, and string car name. Okay, actually let's name this as, yeah, car is fine. Okay, a simple model, and this will use that model as, okay, model equal to lecture 9 models dot lecture 13. Now I can access the model attributes like car ID or whatever we want. Also, let's start a form. Okay, so how do we start form? I wonder if this easy. No. Okay, so let's just copy paste from our lecture 10. I will remove this. So the road, we can use road or other things. I think I will use road parameter, so we will remember that as well. So let's add a road for this method. Road equal to something like lecture 13 index, and a road name as, okay, lecture 13. Okay, that's it. And road will be lecture 13. Then we can define parameters to be posted back to the controller. Let's also do that. So which parameters we have defined in the lecture 13 model? Car ID. So there will be car ID, ASP road car ID. This way we can post back with default values, but okay, we don't need this actually. Currently we don't need actually the postback, but I'm just adding, so we can have some for, so the ASP for, it will automatically tell me as car ID. Okay, so let's say enter car ID integer, and then let's add another input for, okay, this will be car name. Okay, I am setting default value as null, by the way, actually empty. Okay, enter car name string and send data back to server. Okay, and inside here now we will get we will read the posted back parameters such as, okay, so we have our model, so let's generate our model. We can also verify model state. Let's just first start with example, then we will expand it. So here it is checking that request query name is empty or not. Let's make this car name. So I will check car name. If it is not null or empty, then we will assign it to the car name and we will return content. Okay. We can also, so this is the HttpContext.Request query. Then there is the query string as well. So let's also return that as well. How are we gonna do that? We need new line. However, when we return content like this, it is not working as expected. So I will modify my model and return that. So let's add a property name as query string, and or let's say HTTP context query string and HTTP context query. Why did I add these two parameters? Because I will print them onto the screen. So what am I going to do is I will define lecture 13 model. Okay, to be able to use it, let's add using models. Now it will be available. Okay, lecture 13 and my model equal to new model, and here I will set parameters as my model dot HTTP context query equal to, actually this is request query, so let's rename this as context request query and request query string. Okay, and in the controller, yeah, I will set it okay. So this will check the car name. I can also set the car name, but I am not touching that right now. Then let's check query string as well. So the query string is not taking any indexer. It is just a raw query, and okay, it can't convert to the string. Therefore, I need to use it like this, and then I will assign it like this and query string, and we will return our model. So we return div and my model. That's it. Okay. And on here, let's print the values as model dot query string like this, and let's add a new line. Okay, and we have the query string. Okay, let's run the application. And by default, it will open the lecture 12 because we didn't set the root URL as lecture 13. Okay, but it is fine. Okay, so let's open lecture 13 like this. Okay, it says that it is not found, so let's check our controller. We have our road as lecture 13. However, it says that it is not found. Let's try as this way. Okay, so lecture 13 was the road name, not the road itself. The road itself is this one. I was just confused. So you see, I also need to change the view start, by the way, because we are telling that it is the beginning of the view start, and then we need to add some, okay, something like this to see it better. Okay, let's restart. Okay, so currently we have no query strings. Let's say, let's add something. Okay, test and another thing, temporary. Okay, so you see the full query string we are getting is like this. This is the raw query string, and from that we can do whatever we want. And now I will also assign the request query. So request query is expecting car name. By the way, these are, I think, case sensitive. So let's say BMV. It is a brown actually, but okay, BMV is working. What happens if I make this lower case? Oh, it is not case sensitive. That's good. Yeah, it is working. And let's see if we can iterate through all of the request query. I'm gonna do that as well. So I'm going to change this request query into, or let's just make it for each. For each request query. So the request query has iQuery collection. It is iteratable, and so this is key value pair. Nice, that is what we would like to have. So let's append them to the here, such as plus equal to item dot key. Okay, so the let's name it as okay parameter name. Okay, and then parameter value as item dot value, and then let's add a new line like this. Okay, so for each will automatically handle null check, and if it is null, it will never get into this for each. Okay, let's run the application. So now we can print all of the requested parameters and their values. Okay, let's move to the page meanwhile. Okay. Let's take also note as HttpContext.Request.Query. And request string. Okay, index, or not index, lecture 13 index. Okay, there is nothing so far, so let's add this. Okay, parameter name is something, parameter value is test. Is it true? Yes. By the way, you see it is not formatted as HTML. How we were solving that, if you remember. Let me show you that again. So here, instead of add, this is encoding by default. We need to use HTML raw. Okay. And when I make this way, this will remove encoding as encoding of HTML. Okay, it is not a being command, so let's comment it like this, and let's restart. Okay, let's read the form post data meanwhile.
Forms, post data. In the last article, we discussed the query string and how you can read parameters through it. This will usually happen through a so-called GET request, which will most frequently occur as a result of the user entering a URL in the browser or clicking on a link. As an alternative to the GET request, we'll find the POST request. A POST request is usually initiated when the user submits a form, like a contact form or a login form. Unlike a GET request, where the data is visible in the URL, there's no visible data for the user in a POST request. For that reason, you need to use another property on the HttpContext class to pick up post data, the form property.
Okay, before moving to form property, let's test our lecture 13 input like this. Okay, now you see they are formatted as HTML with new line and parameter name something, parameter value test, parameter name another thing, parameter value temp, and I can add as many as parameter I want like this. You see now the parameter name is A. Let's add another parameter name as school equal to tutorials, for example. You see we are able to iterate through all of the input parameters, and this is the raw query string. So you may want to log both of them if you want in the database, and this is the way to get them. Alternatively, we can add them to the post, and now that is what we are going to see.
In ASP.NET MVC, the most common approach to dealing with forms is to bind the form to a model. That means that each field of the form is tied to a property on the model, allowing the form to read from the model and also write to it when the form is submitted. This is often referred to as model binding, and we'll discuss it elsewhere in this tutorial, but in this article, we'll access form data in the old-fashioned way.
Okay, so let's also note this. Okay, all right. So this is traditional form, and I will also have the model binding as well. So in the traditional form, I have to type the full path like this, lecture 13 index, and let's have both of them. In the first form, we will have model binding as you see car ID, car name, and something to postback. And in the traditional form, we will have for car ID, and ID will be car ID like this, and the name will be car ID. Then we will have car name. So you see it is using label for, and we could use that as how was it? Label, input label or I think it was with ASP label for. I don't remember exactly how was it. Okay, let's try it like this, and car name like this. We can also define how they will be visible in our model. Let's also make that so we will remember that as well. So here we will add a parameter as it was view, or what was it? Okay, let's check from our previous models. Display, okay. You see, sometimes you may forget it, like me. So this will be, for display to be available, I need to add data annotations, but I'm going to add this into the Vue import. So I won't be needed to add that to every page. So let's get back into our Vue import, which is here, and I am adding it as using like this. We don't need that semicolon. And now it will automatically work, I suppose. Oh, the Vue import only imported to the views, not the not the controllers. So for controls, I need to edit here. Okay, so the display name, let's say car ID. So it will be better formatted, and okay, car name. All right. And on our index.cs HTML, okay, so these two are equal. Car ID. You see, I have to type extra code, and if I were using that model in multiple views, I would be needed to change it in every view if I am using the legacy way. So for the car name, it will be by the way, this will be type number, and this will be text. ID will be like this for car name. So this is checking the ID of the element, not the name. And then submit. Okay, so let's also name this server with model binding, and send data back to server with legacy way. Okay. All right, they are totally equal right now. One of them is legacy way, and the other one is the modern way. Okay, let's open lecture 13 index. Let's edit the bookmark. Okay, so we have now car ID. You see, they are taking entire space as an input right now. Do you know why? Do you remember why? Because in the previous lecture we have imported actually we've started Bootstrap. Therefore, this is the styling of Bootstrap. When I inspect it, I will see it. So here it has a form control class. This is the default class that ASP.NET MVC adds, and this class is getting from form CSS, and which is getting from, I think, Bootstrap. Yeah, probably this is getting from Bootstrap. And here they are like regular way. Okay, and you see this is also have increment or decrement. Okay, this is the new way, and this is the older way. Now, all right, let's get back into our controller to test them. First, we need to add a post method action to handle it. Okay. Currently, it wouldn't work. So let's add our action as update. This will be our form, and the name will be lecture 13 update, and I will call it as update. So update will take model as an input. It will be lecture 13 model. my model. Okay, first we will verify if the model is valid or not. If model state is valid, if it is not valid, we will just return, and we can't just return, we will return with we shouldn't also return with my model, I think. So we will return with new lecture 13. Okay, so we will return the new model if it is not valid. Then if it is valid, we will just return our model. Okay, let's try it. Oh, by the way, we didn't modify the postback. So the postback will be, let's stop the application. Okay, the postback will be, okay, update. So this will be update, and the other one will take the name. So the name will be this. Okay, let's run the application. All right, let's open page. Let's check the forms. Okay, form method post action is working and there is no validate. And here it is just a regular form. Okay, so let's post back something as this and this. We have no validation, by the way. I will just type PMV, and oh, we have a problem. So what is the problem in our controller postback? Let's just repost, and here, okay, there is my model. Okay, there's car ID, car name. Yeah, the other ones are null. Then I can return model. Okay, so our global handler is capturing the error. Let's check the error. What is it is? So the error is the view update was not found. So this is a simple issue. When I return view, it is by default returning to update view. Okay, this. However, I have to return the index view, and the index view path is this. Okay, I think since we are under the lecture 13 controller, then it should just work. Because we are following the standard pattern right now. Okay. Okay, it is working. However, we are not able to see that because we are not printing yet. So in our index, I'm going to print them like these two. So first one will be model.carID, and the second one will be car name. By default, they are null, therefore it won't print anything to the screen. Let's restart. Okay, something like this and this. Okay, so now the URL has changed to update because we did a postback, but now I am able to see the postback data. Now let's add something like this, so it will change again. Yes, postback is working for both legacy and new version, modern version. Let's continue the article.
Just a basic HTML form. Notice how I set the method attribute to post forms support the get method as well, but it's almost always better to use the post method when dealing with forms. My controller could then look like this.
Okay, and there is nothing else. Okay, so in the legacy way, I will change model binding. Okay, since I have used the same name, I was able to use model binding. This is the model binding methodology. Modern model binding method. Now I'm going to write another version. Update legacy. Okay, I don't need name for this one. And this method will not take model. And what we are going to do is we are going to use the HTTP request form. Okay, so to be able to use it, I need to also make a null check if is null or empty, or we can just directly, I think, assign it, because this will be always posted back. So first I need to generate an instance of my lecture 13 model, my model, equal to new lecture 13, and when composing it, let's set the parameters as car name and car ID equal to. By the way, when I use this method, I am not able to use any validation, and also you see I am not able to directly convert it to car ID. So I will remove this, and I think this will by default get string, and for the car ID try parse, so string will be request form car name, and out will be my model dot car ID. Yeah. Oh, so I have to provide out ref or ref out. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I have read it incorrectly. So it says that a property or indexer may not be accessed, passed as an out or ref parameter. So can I fix this? I think I can. Instead of making this property, I'm going to make this a field. However, that may break my model binding, so I'm not sure what will happen. And let's name it as this. Okay, now it is working. So let's try. You see, currently I am not able to do any verification. I also need to convert integer myself. Oh, we haven't changed the postback. Let me fix it quickly. So this will be change it to update legacy. Okay. Okay, now it should work. All right. So what is HTTP context request form and how to utilize it for legacy way of posting data back to server? Okay, and here now let's test it out. Okay, car ID didn't work because we have provided incorrect name. We can also iterate and write the form properties. So let's also iterate and type them to the screen as well. Okay, to be able to type them to the screen, let's get back into our model, which is here, and let's add a property as string okay, form properties. Okay, and what we're going to do is simply something like this. HttpContext form request form. Okay, and now we will use form properties, and it has key and value, yeah, and we also need to print that to the index page. So let's print it to form properties. By the way, this will be only printed when we use the legacy code currently, because we didn't add it to the model binding. Okay, let's continue reading.
Notice how I can access the values of the form fields by referencing their names, username and user age, as defined in the name property of the form fields, in the form collection.
So the important thing is their name. The ID is for client side, and for server side, it is taking the name at the postback. Okay. Okay. So let's just post. Okay, so the parameter name, car ID, parameter value this, and yeah, it is working as expected. All right, and yeah, let's continue. Cookies. Cookies are really important. All right, now cookies.
Cookies. HTTP, the protocol that takes care of the communication between a server and a client on the web, is known as a stateless protocol. In other words, if a user requests 2 pages on a server, no information will be shared between these 2 requests automatically. Instead, a developer will have to rely on something called cookies, or sessions, more on those later, to share information between the requests. This is extremely useful in a lot of situations, e.g. to keep a user logged in between several requests, etc. Pretty much all server-side technologies have built-in support for handling cookies, and of course the ASP.NET MVC framework does as well. In fact, dealing with cookies is pretty easy, thanks to the functionality found on the HTTP context class. In this article, you'll learn how to set a cookie, and then read it again afterwards, so that you will be able to share information about a specific visitor between his/hers requests. What is a cookie? A cookie is basically a physical, plain text file stored by the client, usually a browser, tied to a specific website. The client will then allow this specific website to read the information stored in this file on subsequent requests, basically allowing the server, or even the client itself, to store information for later use.
Okay, for example, when we work with ASP.NET, it sets a ASP.NET cookie, and that is how server knows that I am requesting a page. Okay, so in here, I think we can see the cookies, context, okay, bundles. Okay, here cookies, and for this page, no, that's not the cookies. Okay, maybe we can see from the network. Okay, so in the network, headers, you see there is request headers cookies. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, ASP.NET Session ID. So this cookie is sent back to the server, and with this one it knows that I am requesting the page. This is the way that server knows who is requesting or not, and this is how much cookies are useful. Okay, setting and reading cookies.
Setting and reading cookies. Setting a cookie and reading it again later on with ASP.NET MVC is very, very easy. Here's how you can send a cookie to the client in its most basic form. HTTP context, response, cookies, append, user_ID 1. Notice how I use the response property on the HTTP context class, where I can access the cookies property. Using the append method, I can add a cookie to the output by supplying a name and a value for it. The name user_ID is what we'll use later on to get the value 1 back. And getting the actual value back is just as easy.
Okay, one thing that you need to be aware of that the client can change and modify cookie as they wish. Okay, so for this you have to be very careful. For example, let's set a cookie and okay, HTTP response cookies. Okay, user ID 1, and let's read that cookie in the postback event like this. Okay, so when we run our page, we will see that we have a cookie now. Okay, and now let's inspect our network. Okay, so here from the headers, we have response headers, which is coming from the server, and we have request headers. And is my cookie here? No, it is not set yet, I think. So why HTTP request append user ID? Let's continue.
Notice how I now use the request property instead of the response. When reading the value back, the reason is that setting a cookie is done by adding information to the response sent to the client, while reading it means that you are pulling information from the request made by the client. A normal browser will automatically send all relevant cookies with each request. So, now that you know how to write and read cookie information, let's combine that into a very simple example, where we add a piece of information as a cookie if it's not already present. This will be a great way to know if a user has visited the page before or not.
Okay, so let's copy and paste this, and I will add it to the lecture. Oh, I know why it was not set, because we have used update method for setting. I will just remove this, and I will put my cookie code into the index like this. Okay, so it will check first cookie, and if it contains, it will add first cookie and no return. Okay, but we can do that. Okay, no need actually. And if it is not, then we will tell that it is not the first time. Oh, we can tell the first time visiting date. So let's add a property to our model here. Datetime, first time visit date. Okay, and okay, from my model like this. All right, and let's also display that on the index page. First time visit date. By the way, I can also give this a display name and use it here. Let me also show you that. So for this, I'm going to have a display name, and it will be first time visiting date, like this. This would be better approach instead of typing it like this. So I'm going to add input, not input, label is before first time visit date, like this. Okay, and let's run the application to see what kind of output we are going to get. Okay, so the first time visiting date is not set at the beginning. However, now it should be set since we have visited. So let's check our cookie. I think where it is. No. Where do we see the cookies? Memory? No. Okay, application cookies. Yes. First request, and it is set as like this. You see. And let's refresh the page to see whether we will be able to read it back or not. Yes, now we are able to see the first time visit. You see the date is different, and when I refresh it, it won't change because this is the first time visiting date which we are holding in cookie. However, I can remove that cookie and let me delete it. And now when I refresh, it will reset. You will see in a moment. Okay, it is reset, and when I refresh, you see now it is reset. Okay, so this is how we can set and read cookies. Okay, and in the code behind, in the controller, okay, so you see we are doing a check, key check, and it returns bool. So it may not handle null values. I am not sure. Okay, let's try if it is able to handle non-existing keys or not. Okay, version 2. Okay, this doesn't exist, and I wonder if it will throw an error or it will just return null. So when you are coding something that you have to be sure that you are covering unexpected cases, unexpected events. Okay, let's refresh. Okay, it is just returning null. So this is handling null cases as well. Okay. And then let's continue reading.
Our controller action now produces response based on whether the visitor has visited the page before, by always checking for the presence of a cookie with the name of first_request. If this cookie is not present, we add it, while setting the value to the current date and time. If the cookie is present, we can assume that the visitor has visited the page before, and we can even tell the visitor when the first visit occurred.
Okay, will my cookie remain after I close the browser? I have closed the browser, as you see. And now let's run our application again to see if our cookie persists or not. We didn't set expire date, so it should remain persist for a while, I believe. Oh, it is not persisting. Okay, so by default, the cookie is not persisting. And now we will see persisting cookie as well.
So, this is basic cookies in a nutshell, and now you know how to write and read them. But there's a bit more you need to know if you want to take full advantage of cookies. Cookie options. As an optional third parameter to the append method we just used, you can pass an instance of the cookie options class. It allows you to adjust several important aspects of your cookie, e.g., how long it should stay alive and stuff like domains and path. Allow me to go through the most important properties, but first, make sure that you have included the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core HTTP namespace, where the cookie options class lives.
Okay.
Now you can create an instance of the cookie options class, which will use the default settings, and then pass it to the append method.
Okay, so it is like this. Let's do it. Okay, where we are going to do it? We are going to do it here. And now it will tell us to add this. Okay, so let's see the default options of a cookie in the debug when we are doing a runtime check. You see, debugging is very useful if you want to learn what capabilities of a class has. Okay, what default parameters it has. Okay, in the cookie options, there is domain, it is null, expires null, HTTP only false, is essential false, max age null, path nothing, same site unspecified, and secure false. Okay, so I'm going to set an expire date. So the expires, it takes date time offset. So expires will be equal to new datetime offset, and datetime offset can take datetime, time span, long ticks, year, whatever we want. So I will just tell that offset, yeah. So it will be datetime now, and the offset will be new time span, and for the time span I will use days. Okay, so 30 days, 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Okay, now I will provide cookie options like this. Now my cookie should be alive for 30 days. Okay, so I should also be able to see that in the browser inspection tools. Okay, let's open the page. Oh, we have an error. So what is not? Okay, not, why don't we use just a datetime instead of this? Yeah, let's use datetime at days 30. Now it should work. Okay, let's open it. Yeah, it is working. You see now it is set. And cookie expiration should be 30 days. I will also print that on the screen in a moment. So let's first check the application. And here, and you see there is expires max age, and the expire is set as 25 June. This date, and this is the size of the cookie. Okay, let's also print the expire date of the cookie on the screen as, let me show you how we're gonna do that. We are going to do that as here. So the first time date will be this, Okay, this is a datetime though. I can't tell it here. So let's add another thing to my model. Lecture 13 prop. Okay, cookie expire date or cookie remaining time. Yeah, this is a better name. All right, it is not important, but so here we will tell that my model dot cookie remaining time equal to, okay, HTTP context cookies. Then there is, okay, so how do we do that? There is cookies and keys first. So this is getting its value, but how can we get its expire date? Okay, C# get cookie expire date. Oh, so it appears that we are not able to read the cookie expiration date because it is not sent back to the server. Yeah, there is no such feature. I think it is related to how browsers are designed. So yeah, now we are able to use the cookie options as well. Okay, and let's continue reading.
Before passing it though, so, between the two lines of code, you likely want to change some of the options. Here are the most relevant ones. Cookie options, expires. By default, your cookie will be a so-called session cookie, meaning that it will only live as long as the browser remains open. Once the browser is closed, the cookie is deleted by the browser.
So this is the default option.
Browser. However, you are free to change this behavior using the expires property. This property is a datetime offset instance, which makes it easy to configure an expiry time like this.
Yeah, this is the way we have used it.
This will make the cookie expire in 7 days. You can of course adjust this using the methods like add days, add hours, and so on.
Okay, this is the classic C#.
Cookie options, domain. By default, the cookie will be set for the domain which made the request. So, if your page is accessed by the domain mywebsite.com, the cookie will be set for mywebsite.com. If your page is accessed using a subdomain, this subdomain will be used, and this is important, because a subdomain could be www. So, if your page is accessed by www.mywebsite.com, the cookie will, by default, only be accessible from www.mywebsite.com and not mywebsite.com. Therefore, it can be a good idea to set the domain property to the base domain of your website, prefixed with a dot like this.
Okay, so this is another thing that you may want to be aware of.
Now your cookie will be accessible from mywebsite.com as well as all possible subdomains. On the other hand, if you don't have full control over the domain, you may want to limit the domain of the cookie to the specific sub-domain you control.
Yeah, this is also another possible option, a possible argument, logical argument.
Cookie options, path. By default, the path of the cookie will be set to /, which basically means that the cookie will be valid for all pages of the website. However, under certain conditions, you may need a cookie that's valid only for a specific page or folder. This is easily accomplished with the path property.
Okay, this is also another important part. You may want to limit your cookie to certain pages. This would reduce your let's say, postback data between pages. So let's test it. So pet cookie, and if it is not existing, I am going to add pet cookie with pet equal to lecture 13, like this, and I will set a pet cookie, and the value this cookie will be valid for, okay, this is not the thing that I'm going to change. Okay, this cookie will be valid for only lecture 13 directory of pages for, okay, and let's see how it is behaving. I'm not sure if it will work like this, but let's try it. So I will set the cookie here, and now when I refresh the network, I will see the cookie is being sent. Let's check it out. So we have first request here, and then we have the pet cookie here. This is also encoded like this, HTML encoded. And when I refresh this page, I think it shouldn't be available to here. So let's check it out. So in localhost, okay, we have the first request, yes. So you see the other cookie is not here because it is only available to this, and this can improve your performance because you see the request size is changing. So the request size for this page, for let me check it. Okay, there is request URL response header. Okay, request header for this page is, it doesn't show. One moment. Okay, response headers and okay, request headers. Okay, so there is no request size, but we can see the cookie size. Okay, like this. And for this page, it will be lesser because we will not send that extra cookie here. So this will save some bytes transfer. And imagine that you have a lot of cookies for certain pages, then it can save much more byte to be transferred over the internet.
With that in place, the cookie will now only be visible and readable to pages in the user's folder, as well as subfolders to it. More properties of cookie options. There are several other interesting properties to be found on cookie options, like is essential, HTTP only, and secure. If you want to know more about them, I suggest that you have a look at the documentation for cookie options.
Okay, let's take a look at the cookie options documentation. And I wonder what is essential.
Indicates if this cookie is essential for the application to function correctly. If true, then consent policy checks may be bypassed. The default value is false.
Okay, this is not very much explanative. Let's open is essential. It is still not very much explanative. What is essential cookie? So let's find from another page. Okay, here it explains. Okay, essential cookies are session cookies. persistent cookies and cookies that keep shopping basket. Okay, cookies dropped by analytic tools such as Google Analytics segment upload not essential. Yeah, it is true. Yeah, it is true, but what is the difference that it makes from the browser side? Maybe it is related to GDPR policy. Yeah, probably it is related to love related policies.
Summary. Thanks to cookies, you can save information about the visitor and retrieve it again on subsequent requests. This is a very important technique, used in a wide range of situations, like keeping the user logged in, tracking their use of your website, and much more.
Okay, and let's move to the next, and sessions.
HTTP Context Sessions. In the previous chapter, we discussed cookies and their importance in the web world, where the need for persistence between requests is vital because of the stateless nature of the HTTP protocol. In most web frameworks, even the old-school frameworks like PHP and ASP Classic, the concept of sessions exists. Sessions versus cookies.
Okay, this is important. Cookies can be modified, sessions cannot be. Let's read it.
While cookies are commonly used to share data between requests for longer periods of time, even several years, sessions are designed to exist for the duration of the current session. A web browsing session can be difficult to define, especially with the move from desktop/laptop PCs to handheld devices, where a browsing session is commonly stopped and resumed many times. In general, you should treat data stored in the session system as temporary. It might disappear at any time, e.g., because the user closes the browser window or restarts their handheld device.
This is so true. Session can be lost anytime.
By default, session data is stored for 20 minutes from the last request.
This is the default, but you can set this on the Windows server or wherever you are running your website. Usually 1 hour or 2 hours. It is up to you how much time you want your session to be valid. And each time when the session is accessed, it will refresh the duration, I believe.
So, if you access a page and something is stored as session data for you, it will be automatically removed after 20 minutes unless you have made a new request within this time period.
Okay, there is something that you should not confuse. You don't need to access that session variable. You just need to access that session. Okay. And when you send back your ASP.NET ID back to server, you are accessing that session, it means. And that is what it is. Let me show you what I mean. So on the application and in here cookies, you see there's ASP.NET session ID. So whenever I make a request to the server with this session ID, it will refresh my session timeout.
You can change the timeout duration when setting up sessions for your site, see below, but as mentioned, you shouldn't try to use sessions to store data for long periods of time. So, if you are looking to store data between multiple sessions, use cookies. Otherwise, the session mechanism is a great choice. To understand the different use cases, think of a classic login system, where the user can check a checkbox to stay logged in. If this is not checked, the login state might as well be stored as a session, and then disappear when the user leaves the site, e.g. by closing the browser. If it is checked, a cookie should be used instead, resulting in the user still being logged in the next time they start their computer and visit your website. However, discussing sessions versus cookies is a little funny because in general, sessions can't really exist without cookies.
This is also true because without your ASP.NET session ID, the server cannot know your session. Therefore, it is reading that from cookie, and therefore without cookies, no sessions. It is so true.
The reason is that while cookies are stored on the device of the user, as small, plain text files, session data is stored, temporarily, in memory, on the server. However, since your website will likely have more than one visitor, the server needs to know which visitor a piece of session data belongs to. For this, it creates a session ID, which is stored as a so-called session cookie on the visitor device. With this ID, the visitor can access their session data across multiple requests. ASP.NET Core MVC, adding support for sessions. In previous versions of the ASP and ASP.NET frameworks, sessions would be available right out of the box. ASP.NET Core is much more modular though, allowing you to add the building blocks you need when you need the. Sessions are one of these building blocks, so we'll have to add support for it. This requires 2 steps. First, you need to install the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core Session NuGet package in your project.
Okay, we already did this for this project. I think we can see it, I think, in the packages, frameworks. So let's check our configuration file in startup, and in here we have UseSessions, if I remember correctly. Maybe I have edited the other lecture code. So let's add before add MVC. Okay, we haven't edited, but now I have edited, and okay, so it appears that our framework is installed. I'm in the session core. Okay, now that we can set.
Notice that you can, optionally, pass in one or several options to be used by the session functionality. One of the things you can configure with this approach is the timeout duration, as described previously in this article, like this.
Okay, so there is the timeout, so we can set timeout as well. So let's add a timeout. You see, this is idle timeout, so this will timeout only if it is idle, otherwise it won't. What other options there are? Okay, there is cookie and IO timeout. Okay, on my web server, on my the games I develop, I use ASP.NET Session State. Okay, and Session State is a really good one to have web forms on your website. Actually, let's read what it is to understand better.
Background. ASP.NET Session State enables you to store and retrieve values for a user as the user navigates ASP.NET pages in a web application. HTTP is a stateless protocol. This means that a web server treats each HTTP request for a page as an independent request.
Okay, this is important. Each request is treated as an independent request.
The server retains no knowledge of variable values that were used during previous requests. ASP.NET Session State identifies requests from the same browser during a limited time window as a session, and provides a way to persist variable values for the duration of that session. By default, ASP.NET Session State is enabled for all ASP.NET applications.
Okay, and there are session variables, session identifiers. Okay, there is session modes, and let me show you the state modes. Actually, I wanted to talk about that. Okay, so I am using state server mode. There is also improg mode. This is rather related to web server that you are going to deploy your application, but let's read them as well. This is important. So what are it's important to learn.
Session State Modes. October 22, 2014. 9 minutes to read. ASP.NET Session State supports several different storage options for session data. Each option is identified by a value in the session state mode enumeration. The following list describes the available session state modes. In-proc mode, which stores session state in memory on the web server. This is the default. state server mode, which stores session state in a separate process called the Asp.Net State Service. This ensures that session state is preserved if the web application is restarted and also makes session state available to multiple web servers in a web farm.
This is the way I use because I start multiple processes for each website, and therefore they are becoming like a web farm, and it also ensures that even your application is restarted, and which happens when your application crashes or something happens, you still keep your sessions. This is the best mode that I would suggest you. Then there is also SQL Server mode, but I think it is not that much good. So the best mode is state server mode. Okay, let's return back to our story. So by default, we will be using improc mode here in our application. And okay, we did set use session. Okay, let's continue reading it.
Using sessions. With session support enabled, we can now start using them by accessing the session property on the HTTP context. When you include the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core HTTP namespace, you can access several get asterisk and set asterisk methods which can be used to retrieve and store data as session data. Allow me to demonstrate this with a complete, although very simple, example. It's basically a view with a form where the user can enter their name. Once submitted, the name is stored as session data and then automatically passed to the view and input field. This will allow you to see the entered name even after the redirect or reloading the page. First, the view.
Okay, so this is about keeping values in the session. So I am going to set it like that in our application. Okay, first let me demonstrate that how our application behaves, then we will demonstrate it with session. Okay, so when I load my page, you see there is no car ID or car name, and the data we get from cookie is remaining. And however, when I set something sent back, it is set it like this. So in the set, by the way, it has overridden, actually it didn't read the cookie in the postback, therefore this is being like this. However, when I return back to index, they are returned back to 0. So what am I going to do is in my let me check. Okay, in my model binding method, I am going to set the session as well. So HTTP context current session, and for setting session, let's say car name equal to my model dot car name, like this. And okay, the session of this is a little bit different. Yeah, we need to use a set string. Okay, set string. So the set string takes a key and a string value. So the key will be this and the value will be car name. Okay, like this. Okay, and let's set the car ID. Can we set objects here? In ASP.NET we are able to set objects, but it is setting a key, and what other there is? There is set. So the set takes byte value, I see. Can we convert this to byte, such as the car ID to byte? Okay, then we will convert it back. Yeah, it says you need to use bit converter dot get bytes, and it will be integer. Okay, car ID, and now we will read it from the session string. So how we're gonna do it is, in my model here, I am going to set car name equal to HTTP context session get string. So the get string will be basically car name, and then we will read the car ID, and for this we will use get int32. There is set int. If there is set int, we can set int actually. Yeah, there is set int, but just use the regular set, so we can turn byte into objects and get them again, so you will learn it. So we will use get, and the get will get a byte array, therefore I need to convert it to integer back. Okay, how do we do it? Okay, there is simply convert to, but there is a problem. We need to convert only if this is not null. Okay, get if equal to null, then if it is null we will set 0, and if it is not null, okay, we will convert it with convert to int32 get, yeah, like this. Instead of getting it here, we are get, and then I can use basically this. Okay, and let's see what happens. I could also use the set integer and get integer, but I have used set method to demonstrate keeping objects in the memory. Actually, instead of this, I have a better idea. But first, let's demonstrate this, then I will show you different thing. Okay, so it doesn't do a null check. Maybe a null check like this. I'm not sure if this will work. Okay, let's try like this, because it doesn't have default null handling. You see, if the method is not handling null values, then you have to do null check. Okay, still not working. So how do we do a null check? Maybe like this. Okay, this is not working, so I think there was a new operator for this. I will show you that this is not the thing that I want. Okay, so value if null, yeah. So it will be like this. If it is null, then this will be null value. Yeah, this is a better approach actually. So I can use this for this one as well. Oh, no, I can't use this. or this one. Okay, now it should work. So this will set that if the value is null, but it will still not solve our problem. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it will still throw an error. So I need to make a quick session check. Yeah. Okay, so I need to make a session check like is available keys try get value, and here, yeah, now I can use try get value, but since I am using get string, then I have to use indicate is loaded keys, and from these keys, okay, I have to check that if that key exists or not. Any, yeah, I have to use any to be sure that this is there. So then if this does exist, so any will return bool equal to true, then we will get string. Okay, can I convert a single? And if not, we will get y. There is any returns bool, yeah. So what is the problem here? Okay, if equal to else like this. Okay, why we have a problem here? So the any, oh, I know. Okay, it takes string and bool predicate, or it takes just any. So for predicate, I need to write a predicate like, let me show it. So this is related to link queue. Any pr equal to car name like this. Yeah, and same will be for other thing. Okay, car ID will be for car ID. If it is true, we will use convert to integer like here. Okay, and if it doesn't exist, then we will return 0. Yeah, now it should work. Okay, this may come to you a bit confusing, so work on that on the whole. So basically what I did is I have written a link queue check. It will check all the keys that it contains, and if there is any match, it will return true, and if it is true, I will just use the get string. Okay, why? Okay, it says that session is not modified. So by default, it is not setting the session. I think it is setting up the session at the first session. Oh, but that doesn't make sense. Let's check our startup. Did we set the use session? Yeah, we have used session. Okay, where services add session? Yeah, add session, then add MVC. Maybe we need to add session for MVC. I'm not sure, but that doesn't make sense either. So on here, I will check if session is started. If session is available, yeah, then I will add this. So maybe our checks were not necessary, I'm not sure. Maybe the root cause was different. Okay, let's check the error. Oh, I see. We didn't install the NuGet package, but it is still not giving an error. Therefore, we have to install that NuGet package. Okay. Okay, then let's look for session here. Okay, Microsoft ASP.NET Core session, latest table, let's install it. It doesn't throw an error, but it is not working. This is so unexpected. I wouldn't expect something like this to happen. Okay, and it is installing or what? Where do we see? Oh, output, it is finished, so it has installed, I think. Okay, let's check out the packages. Let's refresh it. Okay, session is installed. Let's run the application and test again. Oh, still not available. This is so wrong. In our startup, maybe I also need to add, let's check it. So we have to install package, then we need to add session. Oh, I see. We also need to call use session from our configure method, which is in the startup. Okay, so in configure services, we add session, then in startup, we add use sessions. Let's add it to here like this. And add session. Okay, now it will work. I'm pretty sure of it. I would expect it to compile time check these requirements, but it is not at the moment. Okay, now it is working and there is nothing here. I can refresh. So let's set something like this, test. Okay, it is here and let's return back. Okay, we didn't set it. Update legacy. Yeah, we didn't set it in the update legacy. We did set it in our bind code. So car ID 100, car name test. Okay, we did update, we return back and okay. So it says that the input was not in correct because we were using car name. We have to use car ID. Okay, now since I restart, my session will reset 2. You see, you have to be careful with the keys. Okay, nothing set. Let's set 100.111 test. Okay, set. Okay, still car ID. Oh, this won't be get string. This will be get, not get string. Okay, we are making a lot of mistakes. Okay, 100 and test. And oh, we still have a problem. Unable to cast object type byte system type convertible. Why? System byte to integer. We use bit converter, not to convert to, yeah. Okay, bit converter to integer. Okay. You see, we are wasting a lot of time with this approach. I will show you how to save an object and then return it back. Okay, let's test 100 test. Okay, that is set and let's return back index. Okay. Okay, our ID is not working. Why? 100, 101. Okay, yeah. Car ID is not working. Okay, I have a different idea which will be better. So in my legacy code, I am going to set another thing. Like, we already have our model, therefore I will set my model directly as a byte. Okay, let's see how can I do it. Okay, it is like this. So let's add this to our global object. Here, so this will take an object and return byte. So I will make this public static byte like this. This will be under Yeah, this will be on the global methods here, like this, and I will make this as an extension like this. And for binary memory formatter, okay, this will let us save as byte, as serialize. Okay, so this is absolute, so let's look for another code. Okay, and there is also byte array to object. It says use instead. What is the new method? So this is an older method probably. Oh, it says Json Serializer. Actually, I was gonna show you with Json Serializer, but yeah, let's use Json Serializer. Let's use the newest technology instead of this. So what we are going to do is we are going to install Json. Newtonsoft.Json. Let's install it. Basically, what we are going to do is very simple. I already shown this in my object-oriented programming and in my advanced programming, I believe. So basically, we will set string and my model, and it will use JSON serialize. Let me show you. Okay, and here, okay, like this. Okay, serialize my model. So I will serialize model as a string and save that in the session like this. And then simply here, if it is available, I am going to null them. I will tell my model equal to JSON Serializer deserialize. What is this? Here. Okay. DeserializeObject will be lecture 13. Like this, and it will be like this. I wonder if it is checking by default null check. So it will be easier. How did we set the session? We did set the session as, okay, my model. I will name it as like this, so won't get confused. And if it is not null, if okay, string is null or empty, of course we will change it like this. Okay, let's try this. So instead of saving individual values of an object, I will save it as a JSON string, and then I will read that string and turn that into an object with serialization and deserialization. This is also the current approach that is suggested by the Microsoft. So test 2. Okay, and let's refresh. Yes, it is working. It is working on this browser. However, what happens if I delete my session parameter from the application here? So I will delete all cookies and I will refresh the page like this. You see they are gone because my session is reset since it is lost. So 500, 555, something like that. Test. And oh, we have to use the, let me check it like up here actually. 900 test 2. Now it is set. Let's test it on Internet Explorer and it is 0. Because now I have different session for this browser and I have different session for this browser. Each browser have its own session until I close the browser. Alright, so okay, how to properly save and retrieve objects or different data types in session of ASP.NET MVC Core with JsonConvert, DeserializeObject, and SerializeObject. JSON, what was the NuGet package? Newtonsoft.Json, yeah. It's Newtonsoft.Json package. Okay, this is the recommended way now currently. Alright, now we have seen everything about sessions, how to keep them. We can also access sessions in the view. Oh, I'm not sure, let's check it out. Maybe it is shown here. No. And we see we shouldn't access the session in the view actually. That is against the MVC approach. You should access the session in your controller. Okay. All right. All right. So let's move to the next article, and it is caching.
Caching. Introduction. When you create your first ASP.NET MVC website, you are probably not too worried about performance. If you make a basic website, everything will run fast and smooth, thanks to all the effort that has been put into the framework. So you likely haven't given performance any thoughts, and that's fine, but as soon your website evolves into something more complex, improving the performance might become very relevant. An excellent place to start is caching. When talking caching in websites, there are several ways of doing things, but it can generally be divided into two categories: client-side caching and server-side caching, and even though ASP.NET is a server-side technology, it can help you utilize both types of caching. As you may or may not know, your browser is likely already caching stuff for you on your website.
Yeah, it is so true. Let me show you. For example, let's think about this page. Let's go to network. Okay, and let's click refresh. So here you see there are initiator, size, time, type, and status. So here you see this cache. This cache means that my browser didn't load that from the internet anymore. Again, you see, therefore they are 0 bytes, and this is not a cached file. It is the requested page, and this is also dynamic probably, so it is not cached as well. So this is client-side browser caching by default. The server owner doesn't have to do anything for this type of caching.
It has a lot of mechanisms for fetching and storing resources which are normally static, like images and style sheets, CSS, so that they don't have to be downloaded for each request made to your web server. This is an example of client-side caching, since it's performed by the client, the browser, but you can actually accomplish the same type of caching for the actual content of your pages. We'll discuss this in one of the next articles, where we will be looking into the response cache technique. If you're looking for ways of caching stuff directly on the server, instead of on the client, you should be looking into topics like in-memory caching and output caching. We'll talk more about that as well in this chapter.
Okay, so let's continue, proceed.
Caching. Response cache. As we discussed in the introduction article for this chapter, all modern browsers comes with a lot of caching functionality built in. They will always try to detect static stuff, like images and style sheets, and cache it for the next request made by the user. This doesn't apply to the actual page though, because the browser has no way of knowing whether your server will serve the exact same response on the next request or not. That doesn't mean that caching of the page is not possible, it just means that you have to guide the browser. For that purpose, ASP.NET MVC comes with a technique called response cache. Response cache, sometimes referred to as HTTP-based response caching, is most commonly applied directly to the action of a controller, to let the browser know that it can safely cache the response for a specific amount of time. So, if the result of your controller action is always static, or at least remain the same for a specific amount of time, you can tell the browser to cache it like this.
Okay, so this is the response cache that we can tell browser to cache. And let's edit. I will cache it for 3 minutes. Okay. So this is based on minutes, I believe. Oh, it is based on seconds, not the minutes. So we need to change it. Okay, let's close. Okay, so this cache will be applied to index page only, probably. So let's see. It tells that yes, seconds. Okay. So for 2 minutes, we are going to cache the response and see what happens. Okay, first time loaded, let's add something to our index. So this is now another page, and let's go back to the index and let's change the values so that we can see if it is cached or not. And let's go. Okay, it is not getting cached right now. It is updating every moment. Let's go. Index document response. No cache, no store. Okay, currently it is no cache, no store, so not working. Yeah, we don't see the cache control. Oh, I see. So it does ignore the cache when we click refresh, but if I don't click refresh and if I click enter, let's see what happens. Okay, still no cache. Yeah. Let's see the response headers. Yeah, no cache. Interestingly, but we have put a cache to here. Okay. Oh, we need to add response cache and enable response caching. So currently it won't work. So let's enable that response cache and add the NuGet package. Okay. if your page is not static, you wouldn't likely to use caching. But if your page is pretty much static, then you can use response caching. Normally, I don't use response caching in any of my page. So now we need to add response caching like session in our startup. Okay, so first one I will add here, services at response caching, and then I will add app use response. Okay, there is response compression. Yeah, we should use that. And app use response caching. Yeah. Is this by default enabled? No, I don't see. Okay, then we can add variable query keys, and which will make it cached by query. Oh, unable to resolve service for type. Oh, for response compression, it is another thing. So let's also see what is response compression, since we are on that. Okay, let's see what is that.
Network bandwidth is a limited resource. Reducing the size of the response usually increases the responsiveness of an app, often dramatically. One way to reduce payload sizes is to compress an app's responses.
Okay.
When to use response compression middleware. Use server-based response compression technologies in IIS, Apache, or Nginx. The performance of the middleware probably won't match that of the server modules.
Okay, so if you are running your website on a Windows server on IIS, then use the static and dynamic compression of IIS, and you don't need to use this middleware. However, if it is not possible, this IIS, Apache, or NGX compression, then you can use response compression. So, okay, so we don't need it actually at this. Okay, so we can pass that. So let's just try our response caching right now, which is our topic. So you can cache response based on an ID, and you can also cache by headers like this or here. Okay, let's see if we are getting caching. By the way, okay, there is disable cache and preserve log. So currently I am not disabling cache. Okay, still no cache. And yeah, still no cache, no store. Okay, so let's get back to our controller, and maybe we need to add this to the top of the controller, but that wouldn't make sense. Let's try like this, because our response caching is not working. We have added response caching, we have installed. Okay, necessary NuGet package as well. So let's inspect. Let's check the. Okay. Oh, by the way, refresh may cause no caching. Okay, still no cache. Yeah, let's see. We try with Internet Explorer, network, index, no cache, no store. Let's try again. Yeah, no cache, no store. Pragma, no cache. So our response caching is not working. Okay, someone also asked our question. Terminal middleware such as static file middleware must not process response prior to response caching middleware. Okay, so there are a lot of things that has to be valid for caching to work. Okay, so these are the conditions. Since we are using cookies, then we can't response cache, yeah. Yeah. So on our application currently we can use response cache, but now you have the idea. For response cache to work, you need to satisfy these conditions, the ones here. So I will get link of this into our application. So let me note that here. For response cache to work, these conditions have to be satisfied. Okay, there are a lot of conditions, and I will just move to the next article. And then there is output cache. Response cache is very hard to obtain because we are using a lot of other middlewares or cookies.
Caching. Output cache. In ASP.NET Web Forms, as well as in ASP.NET MVC versions before the core framework, the concept of output cache existed. It made it extremely easy to cache entire pages/views, just like we saw with response cache in the previous article, but stored in memory on the web server. The concept of output cache hasn't made it into the core version of the .NET framework as of writing this, but fortunately for us, the community has developed a version based on in-memory caching, which gives you the same opportunities as the output cache features that was built into previous versions. In fact, there are likely several implementations out there, but I will base this article on the webessentials.aspnetcore.output caching NuGet package. As soon as you have installed this package in your project, you just need to make a couple of small adjustments in your startup.cs file to start using the output cache directive.
Okay, so this is it. I think output cache is better than client-side cache. Probably it won't be based on these previous requirements, but let's try it. So NuGet packages, output cache, and ASP.NET output cache module. Okay, and what is the asynchronous? Probably this is not what we are looking for. Okay, we need to, I think, install this. Yeah, Web Essentials ASP.NET output caching. This is what we need. Okay, then we can add app use. Okay, I think they are installed. You see a lot of things are getting installed for just output cache. So many. If you don't need all this, you shouldn't use output caching. Okay, and now let's try. Let's see if output caching working. Output cache, yeah. Okay, you see some of the framework may not be compatible with our version. I think it is displayed in output, yeah. Well, let's just try, no harm. Okay, so currently it should be cached, and let's change something like this, and let's go back to page. Yeah, it is cached. Yes, it is working. So it is cached for 2 minutes, and I will make it for 15 seconds so that we can see. So output caching is working, which would reduce our server load. Okay, so currently it is not cached, so let's add test. Okay, it is now trying. Okay, so currently it is loading from cache, and in 10 seconds it should load from not cache. Okay, I think we are still reading cache. Okay, 15 seconds already passed. Let's check the debug. Okay, interesting. So I will put a breakpoint here. Yeah, breakpoint is not entering, but 15 seconds already passed. Okay, still it is reading from cache. It is interesting. Wow. When I click refresh, it doesn't change the behavior. Okay, it says it is second, but I don't see it. I mean, it is not working after the 15 seconds. Okay, this is working, and now, no, nothing. Maybe we need to put this to here. Okay. Enable server-side output caching. Duration is seconds, 15 seconds. So let's try again. Okay, cache is never, okay, first time it is working. Second time cache it. Now let's see how much seconds it will be cached for. This is interesting. Maybe it refreshes the cache each time we request, but okay, now refreshed. Okay, now working. Yeah. So we should put it here. Okay, let's make a test like this. Okay, still on the cache, on the cache. Okay, sometimes it refreshes the page, but our session is lost or something like that. Yeah, it is interesting. So let's set context as, yeah, I need to set the context with this. Okay, let's refresh, then okay, let's set something like this. And okay, currently from cache, and in 15 seconds it should load. Okay, so let's put a breakpoint to see. Okay, cache is not expiring again. Yeah, I don't know why, but it is not expiring. Yeah, output cache not expire. Okay, now refresh it. Yeah, now working. Okay, anyway, this is the output cache, and now we know it. So let's move to the next. And then there is another caching methodology.
Caching. In-memory caching with iMemory cache. As we saw in the previous article, the concept of output cache was introduced in previous versions of the .NET framework, and it's also supported in the .NET Core framework through the use of a NuGet package. However, in .NET Core 2.0, Microsoft introduced a more native approach to in-memory caching with the Microsoft extensions, caching, memory namespace.
Yeah, this looks better than the previous one because previous one is not working as expected.
This means
always.
that you can now use caching on the server natively, without the use of NuGet packages in your ASP.NET Core projects. This is most commonly done in your controllers using dependency injection. So, for instance, if you want to use caching in your home controller, you simply need to include the Microsoft extensions, caching, memory namespace through a using statement and then inject the iMemory cache service into the constructor of the controller. Here's an example.
Okay, so let's add this caching to our lecture 12, which is lecture 10 using here. Okay, then we use dependency injection like here. We have seen that in the previous lecture. So private iMemory cache, and then we will overload the controller, I mean the constructor like this, you see. And now we can assign this memory cache to cache. Okay. Then you can now use memory cache object. Let's see.
You can now use the underscore memory cache object in your controller actions. It comes with several handy methods to cache objects and retrieve them again. This is also one of the main differences between output cache and the iMemory cache approach. While the output cache was generally used to cache the entire result of a controller method, iMemory cache is generally used to store the objects needed to generate the result. So for instance, if you have a user controller with a details method to display details about a user from the database, the output cache approach would cache the entire output of this method with iMemory cache. You would instead cache the user object and then use it to return the appropriate view. In both situations, you save the potentially expensive database call, but you get more control of the process with the iMemory cache approach. Just make sure that you remember the following guidelines when using in-memory caching. Don't assume that your objects are still in the cache. Make sure that you always check and provide code for re-filling the cache. Since in-memory caching uses the RAM on your server to store objects, you should treat it as a scarce resource and limit the amount and size of stuff you put into it. You should also make sure to set an expiration on the data you cache, so that the framework is allowed to remove stuff from the cache again once it's not valid anymore. The framework doesn't enforce any size/memory limitations to your cache. You are required to do this manually, using the setSize, size, and size limit properties/methods, if your use of the caching mechanism goes beyond basic usage. With that in place, let's try using the memory cache. Here's a simple example.
Okay, so I am going to write another method here, such as lecture 10. Okay, memory cache, and we are going to use string cache, daytime now, and string caged message, memory cache, and then okay, it will be like this. Yeah, this will be inside the action actually, not outside. So this will cache this inside the memory as try get value out caged message, and cache was refreshed, and then if it is not available, it will set the cache like this. So the cache key will be setting item and then the cached message. Okay, so this takes an object and the string key. So the key, okay, let me check it, object key and the value. Yeah, so the key will be object key and our string value. Okay, so this will be changed every minute because this returns the system date as up to minute, and every minute this will cache the result and then change the cache, because every minute this key will change. Let me show you what does this do. I will put a breakpoint to show you how the key is generated with this formatting. It will work as lecture 10 memory cache, by the way, like this. Okay, so the key will be equal to, you see, 2021 and 05 and 2701, which is my local date, and 37 is the minute. And since it doesn't exist on the cache, it will take 3 seconds. Then it will tell cache was refreshed and it will set the cache. Otherwise, it will just return the cache. Okay, until we get into the 38. Okay, now we are in the 38. It is refreshing, and now it will return from cache until it is 39. Okay, so this is about caching objects in memory and accessing them from memory. This is also native caching. Okay. Okay, and let's continue reading. Yeah. Cache expiration, we still didn't set it. You see it is available until the next minute. Actually, they will be available always because we didn't set expiration.
Cache expiration. As mentioned previously, it's always a good idea to set an expiration date time on stuff you cache. If you don't, it won't be removed from the cache, unless the application pool is recycled, and while that is okay for some use cases, most of your data should probably expire sooner or later, so that it can be refreshed, e.g. from the database. Fortunately for us, ASP.NET makes it easy for us to specify when cached data should expire. There are two types of expiration that you can set for your cached entries: sliding and absolute. Sliding expiration. A sliding expiration will allow a cached entry to expire if it hasn't been accessed for a defined amount of time. A common usage for this would be to load something heavy, and then set a sliding expiration of e.g. 15 minutes. Each time the user accesses the data, the expiration will be postponed, allowing the user to keep on working with the data. However, when 15 minutes have passed without the user accessing the cached data, it will expire and the resources will be freed. In the next example, I'll show you how to set a sliding expiration. It will be based on our first example in this article, but you'll notice that I use another approach for accessing/filling the cache. The method is called getOrCreate, and it's very convenient. You simply specify a cache key, and then a method for filling the cache in case nothing is found with the key. The method will include a parameter which you can also use for specifying options for the cache entry, and it will return the cached entry, no matter if it's actually pulled from the cache right now or created instead. Here's how it looks.
Okay, this is also another example. It is also pretty easy. So let's also do that. We can also set this in our lecture 13 actually. So let's make it in lecture 13. Okay, lecture 13, sliding cache like this. Okay, and by the way, to be able to use it in the sliding in the lecture 13, I have to copy and paste the same things like this. We have private iMemory cache, and we are going to do a dependency injection like here. Let me show you. Okay, by the way, we will take them into the proper correct class here, and lecture 10 controller here, and now it will work. Okay, this is dependency injection, and here we have sliding cache. Let's fill inside of it like this. Okay, so what does this going to do is it will generate a key based on the date. We can also set a specific cache as well, like my date cache, so you won't get confused, or date cache key, and it will use getOrCreate with a simulation of 3 seconds, and it will set sliding expiration. So the entry is the iCache entry that we are generating, if it is not available. If it is available, it will just get the cached message or not. So let's make this refreshing every 15 seconds. Okay, so this will be the URL to access it that we did set. And after 15 seconds, the cache will be removed from the memory, therefore it will get refreshed. So the first time it is taking 3 seconds to load, then okay, after 3 seconds it will refresh again, 15 seconds. Okay, in a moment. By the way, we can see the seconds. Oh, since this is sliding expiration, then and we are requesting it frequently, it never expires. So not too long string, but just now to see the second as well. So I have to wait 15 seconds. By the way, there is no this, okay, because it is not a method, it's a struct. Okay, to let it expire, I have to wait 15 seconds before I refresh the page and access it again. Okay, so the first time it is generating key. Okay, 21 seconds. Oh, it is still not showing this second. Anyway. Okay, let's just also add second. Yeah, now we can see. Okay, so let's refresh. I mean, sorry about that. So our name is, yeah. Okay, first time load. Okay, 25 seconds. It is cached. And as long as I refresh, it will never expire. So let's wait 15 seconds. We can also check from the date. Okay, now let's refresh it. Okay, now getting refreshed. Okay, now refresh it. Now we can wait 15 seconds as well. Okay, this is the way it works. So this was sliding expiration. We can also set absolute expiration, like let's also set it like this. So it won't be affected by the set absolute expiration. It won't be affected by the refreshing. So let's also test that. By the way, I think sliding expression is based on any user, not just you. Okay, and sliding cache. First time load. Now I will keep refreshing, and in 15 seconds it will refresh again because we did set absolute cache. Okay, let's catch it. Okay, now refreshing. Yeah. All right, and yeah. And working with databases. Actually, we have already working with databases, but let's see that next week. Okay, so this is enough for this week. It has been already about 3 hours. Don't worry if we can't, actually we won't be able to finish in 14 weeks and see Bootstrap, so I will record extra lecture for you. So we will see Bootstrap as well. But the important thing is how to code the server side in MVC model. Bootstrap is much more easier to learn, and it is more about client side development, not the server side, not backend. It is front side development. Source code. I hope there isn't any bigger DLL file or something, because if it is above 100 megabyte, it doesn't allow. Okay. All right, end of lecture 13. Hopefully see you next week. Okay, goodbye.